Let's start with reading what the president actually said in his early morning tweet today. With universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment to the USA. Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote. And of course, any delay cannot be through executive fiat. It cannot be through executive action. The only way you can delay a US election, which is set in the Constitution, is through an act of Congress. And unfortunately, Republicans do not have the numbers. They do not control the House of Representatives. That is controlled by the opposition, Democrats, and it seems very unlikely that they would go along with such a request. And of course, this is coming within the context of this public health emergency known as coronavirus, and how some states are trying to recalibrate or how they approach this November election from a safety, public health and safety perspective. And so a lot of them are exploring the idea of mail-in ballots, but this is, of course, also not a new idea in the United States. 5 states currently have mail-in voting as the only manner in which you vote in elections. You do not see people lining up in the states of Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Utah. And election experts tell us that there is no basis for the president talking about, the U.S. embarrassing itself, because there is no basis for his claims of fraud. So a spurious canard being injected into the conversation. And let me read you a quote from someone, Sepiso, quote, "Mark my words, I think he's going to try to kick back the election somehow." Who said that? Joe Biden. When? At a fundraiser 3 months ago.
And that's the point that I wanted to raise as well, Sherwin, that it's almost been a slow brewing thing, hasn't it? The fact that Donald Trump has been raising the issue of the credibility of the mail-in votes, and his critics have hit out at him. But what have been the reactions beyond the Republican in other quarters, and has it been swift?
It has been swift, and I'll quote you a Republican governor, the Republican governor of New Hampshire, the state of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, writing this, and I quote him here: "Make no mistake, the election will happen in New Hampshire on November 3rd. End of story. Our voting system in New Hampshire is secure, safe, and reliable. We have done it right 100% of the time for 100 years. This year will be no different." Nancy Pelosi, who's currently at John Lewis's funeral in Georgia, Atlanta, tweeted. She tagged the president's tweet to her response. She writes, "Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution states, the Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States." And so this is a statutorily mandated election day. The Constitution reads as follows: the Tuesday next after the first Monday in the month of November, equaling the first Tuesday after November 1st. So the Constitution is pretty clear on that. A few more reactions. Amy Klobuchar was one of the front runners at one point in the Democratic nomination for president. "Donald Trump does not have the power to postpone the election based on his fear of losing or for any reason. Don't let this scare you. Vote." The American Civil Liberties Union. "This is America. We are a democracy, not a dictatorship. The Constitution sets the date of the election in November. Nothing President Trump says, does, or tweets can change that."
Sherwin, I want to highlight what you've just said, the fear of losing. He has on many times really discarded what the opinion polls are saying about his popularity. Is this what the pundits are saying is behind this, that he may face a hammering in November? And I want to talk about latest events. There's a video of a doctor that he was touting who was pretty much supporting what he's been pushing as his response for COVID-19.
You're absolutely right. The polls do tell us a certain story here, that the president, based on the numbers that we are seeing, particularly in the swing states that he basically cleaned the table against Hillary Clinton with in 2016, he is losing to Joe Biden in places like Texas, which is a red state historically, in places like Arizona, in Florida, which is such an important swing state for any Republican. Ask George Bush against Al Gore how important Florida Florida is, eventually the Supreme Court having to weigh in there. The national polling says Joe Biden on average has an 8 to 12% lead against the president, and who's really been hammered based on his poor handling of the coronavirus pandemic. His disapproval rating is way above his approval rating, which is now in around the 30s. So his core support, around 38%, have stuck with this president. But Joe Biden has managed, during the 6 months of this pandemic in the United States, really to streak ahead here. And we heard similar iterations from this president in 2016 when all the polls were showing that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And of course, he's concerned that in that instance that the election might too be fraudulent if he were to lose. So this is a narcissistic president. We know that to be on the record. I mean, this is visible almost every day. And so his fear of losing and what that would say about him personally, I think he's trying to deflect here with what he's tweeting today.